off and running. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first episode where we will have a special guest on the podcast. So it's not just me and Rainwater ranting for an hour. Now we only rant for 2/3 of the hour. We share the ranting. Today we have our good friend Matt on. Matt was one of the integral cogs. I would even say he was the connective tissue between myself and Rainwater when it came to SCAD.
Right.
Because I don't think you and I knew each other until we connected through Matt.
That's correct. Yeah.
At one point, we all had 3D design together. I remember that, didn't we?
Yep,
Yes.
That's it.
With Stromberg. Oh, should I not say his name?
I don't
we
matter.
We can beep it out, maybe.
We have a dedicated
great
audience of like 6 listeners at the moment, and I don't think he's one of them. So
Yeah, he might be.
Who
Especially
knows?
if you take your logo and tilt it and paint it red. Then he really will.
Very dynamic class.
That was the
Yes.
only class that I think I ever pulled an all-nighter for, because I just and it's not because I'm a procrastination type of person. I just didn't want to do things in that class. I'm okay with like filming or painting or drawing or whatever, but I don't want to build things. It takes too long, and they always fall apart and they don't look like how I want them to look. So it was like that class was a dread to me just to go. And I think that was an 8 a.m. class too. I think
Early
that
in the morning,
that was not one of my favorites. So yeah, but I remember us all kind of joining together in hatred of that class, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Because
We
Matt,
through together.
you are a traditional 2D artist.
I am. Much like Mr. Rainwater, I came up in the sequential art comics side of the SCAD curriculum.
Good old Norris Hall.
Norris Hall. You know what? And I don't know if you're aware of this, Rainwater. Norris Hall is no longer sequential art.
Oh, what is it now?
It's like ESL and like ESL services or something.
Oh, okay.
And like I think Sequa went to another building. I'm not sure, but they painted Norris. It's no longer even pink. It's not pink anymore.
I miss the big pink building.
I know. It makes me sad.
But
anyway.
Things change.
I don't miss
Taste
anything about SCAD. I don't have a love-hate relationship with that college. I frequently will tell anyone who asks that the only positive that came out of going to college there was the friends and connections that I made. Because after the fact, I realized everything that I learned I probably could have gotten by researching on the internet or going to the library or just trial and error on my own.
Well, you know what's funny about that, though, is like I've thought about that frequently, right? Because I'm trying desperately to justify the 6 figures I took out in loans to go there.
Yeah.
But like the people that I met there, you guys included, is like priceless.
That's true.
It's true.
You know what I
That's
mean?
100%.
Like, because like I missed you guys like hardcore.
Yeah.
And so like I'm so glad to be here. And like I met my spouse there,
Right.
you know, like
Yeah. That's priceless too, for sure.
yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. So it's not like I didn't get anything out of it. And like I remember like Rainwater, we went to that free They Might Be Giants concert because of how rich the school was.
Yes. That was so amazing. That was like one of the best concerts ever.
Yeah, me and Rainwater were in the pit, Joe.
Oh my
It's
God.
funny because like I don't SCAD in general I don't miss too much, but Norris Hall I do. Norris Hall was fun. It had an energy to it that's like. What are you gonna say, Joe?
I was gonna say that like we talk about the friends and the networks, but I think the word that we're looking for right now is the community. Because when I came back to Connecticut, the thing that I realized was everyone here is, and I don't mean this in some kind of stuck-up snobby way, but it's going to sound that way anyway, but they're fucking tasteless. Like, they have no idea what they're talking about in terms of art and film
With
and stuff like that.
preamble, dude, I thought it was going to at least be put a little lightly. And
No.
you just came out left field. That was hilarious.
Like, it was an eye-opening for me, and I feel like that is what moved me forward. And this is actually kind of the topic that we were kind of roughly kicking around before we got started was I got exposed to so much different kinds of art and perspective on art, and it was it wasn't just some kind of like vapid fucking pretentious views on art. Like everyone there.
Not always.
Well, okay, the fashion department notwithstanding, and most of the film department and this and that. There was definitely a lot of that there, but I feel like the authentic artists could find each other there so much easier than you could in wherever the spread out cities that we are now. So like that was valuable to me.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say, Matt?
100%. I'm sorry, Joe, to just step all over you.
We step all the time. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So at any rate, like we kind of name dropped fashion there, and like Erin's minor was fashion. And that kind of exposed me to like a different side of that department, right? Mm-hmm. And what I learned, because like she was performing arts and fashion. I was talking about my spouse, Erin. And it kind of showed me like every single department had like cool, approachable, like socially open people who were pretty accepting.
Yep.
And then every department had like the vocal minority of just like kind of elitist, like segregatory, like kind of people. Because like our department had that too. And like Zhao being in film, like I know yours did, like
unbelievable. I don't think there were very many filmmakers that I still keep in touch with. There was a couple of them, but most of them were obsessive about technical stuff, and they, you know what I mean? Like that was their thing. They weren't there technically about the story or the characters, whatever. They were just obsessed with cameras and chips and like fucking coding and all this kind of shit. And I'm just like, that's important to know, but like it's got to be in service to other stuff. And they all just looked at me like, what are you talking about? It's just whatever. You just try stuff, and if it works, it works. And it was just like, no, there's a way to figure this out. Like that was my biggest issue.
And I think it was like episode 3, Zhao, you were talking about, just so in case your listeners want to go back and give that another watch. Episode 3 was like, you were talking about cameras because Rainwater had asked about what's the best camera to use.
Right.
And like, that was kind of when you got into your view of like the obsession with cameras and tech and how everything went.
Right.
And I mean, I found that very useful because I started out as a film student.
I remember that. I think that's how we initially connected. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they put me with my cherished, loved roommate, Diego. Shout out to Diego.
Diego!
One of the best people I've ever met in my life to this day.
Believe it or not,
I was there for his wedding in Costa Rica.
Oh my God, we're gonna have to talk about that. But just not to cut you off, but we are. I am hoping to ask Diego to come on, and when we do that, I definitely think that'll be one of the rare occurrences. We'll have like 4 people at once. But
maybe if you guys both want to take a break, just Diego and I can hijack your show.
Oh yes, I love that idea.
Yeah. So like, my roommate Diego, and like they tried to put, to SCAD's credit, because we all got there kind of around the time before it really got gentrified, I guess I want to say. They still kind of had the mission in mind when I was a freshman there. And I first stayed in O House, where Zhao, you also did, not to get too off track, but they tried to mix it up and put students of different majors next to each other, so there would be some kind of a community. But then they limited it, like O House was like 2D, like illustration, sequa, and like film, and that was pretty much it. That's right. Because there was a lot of crossover there, and then from there, like you could kind of go wild card and go wherever you wanted after your first year. But you and I were next door neighbors, Zhao, and then Rainwater came in, I think, the next year because I was in Turner at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. For sure. And so I think I took that class. So going back to the 3D, we're
circle back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I met you at the 3D design class, but I think me and Matt didn't really become friends until a little bit later on, when I started like really taking, I guess we both probably started taking a lot more sequa classes or sequential art classes.
What's funny about that though is, did we mention, we were talking about 3D design on the recording, correct?
Yeah.
Just so the listeners are hip to that. So I think 3D design is where we actually met.
Okay.
because you sat at the table kind of near me and Zhao,
That's right.
and we're like
yeah.
super funny like you are now, and
Yes.
like we were both like, we gotta hang out with this guy.
Yeah.
And then like it just got better. Like, I'm not trying to kiss your ass too much, Rainwater, but like the more I talked to each of you, it just got better. So I had no reason to like not. And like I found out you were sequential too, and like actually you and I didn't share a lot of sequential classes, Rainwater.
No, I don't think we did. We even share any?
I camped out with Tom Lyle. Rest in peace.
Yeah, right.
Tom Lyle was kind of my SCAD mentor. Him and Ray Godo.
Yeah.
Ray
Tom
was
Lyle
big.
was awesome.
Yeah, Tom Lyle. Here's
Ray
the
Godo
thing,
was awesome
like,
too.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and like just the amount of people in that, just our department, Rainwater. And I mean, I wasn't in film long enough to know Zhao, so I'm not trying to exclude film, but like, there was a lot of people in that department who were really great.
Yeah.
I really liked a lot of the teachers there, and I'm still Facebook friends with a great many of them. You know, until we lost Tom, I was there with him. You know, we lost David Gildersleeve.
Right. Oh, he passed away recently?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that he did.
I hadn't heard. Okay, I'm not in the loop enough to know.
But I don't know. And then, you know, and I started getting like worried too, because like Larison said he had COVID, and I'm just like, oh my God, Larison, stay healthy.
If anybody was going to beat COVID, it'd be Larison.
It'll be Larison, exactly.
Because he's got some like, sort of
he's like
alchemical
dolphins.
Yeah.
Like he'd come in and he'd be like, oh, this morning, we're at a morning class. And he's like, this morning, like when the sun was coming up, I was surfing with dolphins. And we're like, cool. I mean, that is cool. But that's something I would never be caught doing because of my habits in personal life.
See, that's the thing that I've noticed is that, and this is something that tracks back to when I was at SCAD, was that was at one point, I don't even know if I told you guys this, I actually considered jumping ship from film to sequential because I was envious of you guys, because the sequential department felt pretty tight-knit. Yes, like we said before, there were exceptions to that rule in terms of, you know, there were people who thought they were hot shit and they really weren't, and then there was people that just kind of kept to themselves or whatever. But for the most part, like with the teachers and everything like that, you guys felt like you belonged with a lot of those teachers. And for me, in the film department, I was the odd man out. It felt like I was like the guy, like a pledge trying to get into a fraternity, and they were just fucking with me constantly. Like I had
That's
no.
What the film department felt. Yeah, I can speak from experience a little bit. Yeah,
and they were just shitty people, and that even goes towards like most of the professors. I don't want to say all of them because I had one or two that I really loved. But it was hard to get into that knit, and it was like one of those things where the film department just felt pretentious. Like everybody there was a dude, bro. I'm just here to make my movie, and it's gonna be awesome, and da-da-da. And it was just like I don't fit in with these people. It was
people who really wanted to be famous, really
right?
badly.
And that was the difference between being famous and making films. Were two different goals, and that's like a lot of them were just there to get famous. Like, and that was it. Just that never occurred to me. So I always felt out, and that's why I connected with you guys. Is it was just like, okay, these guys just do what they fucking love, and that's it. Like they do it, and that's it. So like when I met you guys, it was like a really like, it felt like I had found people, and then I just like leaned into it hard. So we were talking in the first podcast about how I suffered an identity crisis. Joker, I don't know if you remember when I thought I was a white rapper. When I was there.
Yes, the infamous
Anjao. That's right. And then you kind of you converted me into the Batman kid. And when I say converted me, I don't mean like you were like twisting and warping my mind. Like I just gravitated towards that because you were like a big time mark for everything the Joker. And it was like, okay, I was raised on Batman. Like everybody called me the Batman kid, and this kid is the Joker. And I feel like we have this weird, like contrasting relationship going on. And it fit to me because I was like, okay, I can be open about this thing that I fucking love, and this guy is gonna like accept me for it. So like I started leaning heavily into that. And I remember There was one defining moment of our relationship at SCAD that I will never forget, which was we were on the balcony at O House, and you already know where I'm going with this, where I was looking over the balcony. I'll be like, man, wouldn't it be fucking cool to have a cape and jump off of this? And you were like, it's 6 floors up. No, Joe. It was just like this, like...
I'm like, I'm pretty sure you'd splatter on the ground, man.
Yeah, but it didn't mind because, like, it was one of those things where if I had said that to somebody in the film department, I would have felt embarrassed when they came back with it. But you were just, like, fucking around with me. I was just like, okay, that's a cool idea, but let's come back to reality. But then...
Well, and that made it into my intro to comicking class mini comic.
I still have
remember
that.
That was a page in that comic.
I still have it. I still have it. It's
Oh,
on my
man.
it's on my bookshelf now. You gave me 2 copies. One of them sitting on my bookshelf, and the other one my mom
I
has.
gave you 2 copies, so they're trying to get rid of them.
No, well, I had 2 copies because I wanted one, and then I remember my mother wanted one because she was like, "Somebody put
That's
you in a
right.
comic book," and I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I want it."
Pisarko wanted one.
Yep. But
Yeah.
so getting back to the topic at hand that I was trying to get at, that I was mining forever.
Okay.
You introduced me into a world of everything that I probably would not have even thought about dipping a toe into when I was at SCAD. Like, I was very close-minded. I wouldn't kind of venture out into different things. I was always like, the fuck anime, I hate. And, you know, it was really just kind of me trying to be contrarian, or there was only anime kids that I knew, and you were like, okay, but you need to check out Cowboy Bebop, and you need to check out
Yeah, you do.
like all this kind of stuff, and like there's like BBC stuff. You introduced me to Red Dwarf, like everything,
Yeah.
and then even things
Joe,
that I
can
loved.
I add?
Go
can
for
I
it.
add
Yeah,
to
yeah.
that too, because like I was getting into sequential art, and I had not really read that much stuff before I got into SCAD. Like I had read like what was it, Dark Knight, like the Frank Miller Dark Knight books, and like some manga, and like the only thing I'd really read religiously was the Sonic the Hedgehog comics. Like that was my jam for a long time. And so when I met you, you were like the sage in my mind, kind of guiding me through like, here's fucking comic books, dude. Like,
Who, me? I
yeah, yeah, dude. Because you introduced me to so many indie like dudes, like Sam. Was it Sam Keith who did the Max, and
Hell
like.
Yeah. Yep, that's one of my favorites.
I didn't get into Sandman until I met you. I didn't really learn about like Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing, which was
mind-blowingly awesome.
that broke it all open for me. Like I was a completely different artist after that point.
Yeah, which then inspired the DC Universe, the mini series Swamp Thing that recently dropped.
Yeah.
It was a couple years ago. Funny story about that. Like they went over budget on that. Did you guys hear about that? That's kind of joins film and comics. So I figure it's apropos. Like, they thought they were given one budget by the studio, so they went all out and made the best possible thing art-wise that they could make with it. And then the studio's like, wait a second, what number did you hear for your budget? And they were like, this number. And they're like, no, we didn't give you 2 feature films worth of money for this. And then so like they tanked pretty hard. It was going to go an ongoing series, and then
I had heard that they were making it. I didn't realize that it got made though. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, it's on DVD and Blu-ray skis. If you're
you're talking about
probably be
Swamp Thing TV show that recently came out, correct? It was like on a DC platform, kind of like the Disney Plus kind of thing. I remember I heard about it. I didn't watch it.
No plug though.
I heard that it was like like James Wan was involved with it, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it was weird because they dropped like 3 episodes, and they were episodes like 2, 3, and 4. They didn't do the first one, then they went back and did the first one. Then they dropped the rest of the season, and then they held off on like the last episode for like 2 months, and then it came back, and it was like a total shit show. It's like, how do you expect something like that to thrive? But I'm sure in the age of the internet, because we've touched on this before with other topics, I'm sure it's going to find an audience, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets some kind of revival. But the fact of the matter is Warner Brothers and HBO Max is a fucking mess at the moment, so I'm not optimistic about anything coming back to life. But I'll
tell you what though, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
launch into it.
I was gonna ask you.
No, you had good momentum. I'm not killing it. Go.
I was gonna ask you because we were talking before you even jumped on the call, Matt Joker. it's integral to every artist to expose themselves, their viewership to other, period, to new forms of art and this and that. Like, I'm curious to know, where do you discover this stuff? Because if I needed a reference, like if I needed to ask something like, where can I find some things to draw from? Like, you were like the go-to guy. And I'm curious to know, how do you find those things? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have someone that you look up to, or are you just constantly looking for new shit? Like what's your research like approach? How do you absorb so much stuff?
I think my being, and not to get too woo woo on this, but I know like Rainwater, you'll probably be with me on this.
I'll glom.
Yeah. I'm like Virgo-y. I like being Virgo-y, so I have to like see it, catalog it. What are more things?
Yeah.
What are more things to catalog, and then link to this and this, and like I've always had a passion for showing people things I think they'd like, and like I really like when it's like a gift giving occasion. And you can ask Aaron this if you guys talk. Like, I like giving gifts way more than I like getting them, because I like picking out the perfect gift for somebody that I care about, that I know that they will like. And that even better if they never heard of it.
You did that for me, actually. I wore a gift that you got for me just a week or two ago. There was a Batman screen printed shirt that had the fake muscles and like the Keaton emblem and this and that. And I didn't fit into it for a while, but I found it, and then we did a photo shoot with my whole family wearing Batman shit. But I remember picking it up and going, "Oh yeah, Joker gave me this," and like that was never anything that I would have even thought that would have existed, and you were able to find it. There were so many things that you exposed me to, and if we even want to ride the joke of exposure, I don't know. I feel like Rainwater was there for this, but I remember you specifically. You know where?
A lot of rain.
I think you know where I'm going with this. I remember specifically, it was me, you, Aaron, and I think Rainwater, possibly Diego. We sat down and we watched a porn together. It was this.
We did.
That's right.
The high quality pirate porn, and it was one of those things where it's like, how the fuck does someone find this?
Here's the thing, and I knew about that only because I had heard it was like a big budget. It was like one of the first big budget pornos, and it was going to have CG skeleton warriors in it, which like that appealed to my my sequential art bent a little bit. But like, and it's funny you mentioned that too, because Erin and I consider that like our first unofficial date, even though she was technically dating someone else at the time. Because I didn't make any moves, nothing happened, we were all good. We're not shitty people, and we did have a lot of fun.
Horribly
going to that
uncomfortable.
Shop with a big mass.
We were all horribly uncomfortable that night. It was like 6 of us in a room watching people bang, and it was just like, I know this is art school and college is where you're supposed to experiment, but this is a little out there for me.
I just thought it would be a lot funnier if we were all, and in the end, it's all about being funnier. It'd be a lot funnier if we all watched this together. And I know it was really awkward, and I knew that, and that's where the funny came from.
Yeah, absolutely. Look how uncomfortable Zhao is. He's got to have like a fucking pillow on his lap because he doesn't want to show a boner. Well,
For the record, he did not have a boner.
I don't remember. I just remember.
Not necessary.
I just remember the night. I don't remember specifics from the night. I think I have like PTSD trying to block it out of my head, where it's just like, I watched porn with 7 people. It's weird.
So, on the actual thing, my biggest complaint with it, my biggest critique of that, wasn't the big budget. They used it well, and I thought the costumes were good. I thought the skeleton warriors were as good as you would expect to be in a porno. You know, like for skeleton warriors as they go. But like, it was not varied enough. And that's all I'll say, because I think this is going to get blue really quickly. I really think. Oh, Zhao, you were in color for a second.
Oh, was I? I've tried to.
Yeah, it was magic.
I tried to hook my hotspot on my phone to the computer, and it went seamlessly. So I don't know what's happening, but my color is terrible. If you noticed in the last YouTube, I went full black and white because Skype does not care. But we're using some new equipment to our listeners, so. Chances are Rainwater and Joker are going to sound like they're coming in through a Skype call, but I'm going to have crystal clear audio this episode. So it's all
Sorry,
about
guys.
me anyway, for our listeners.
Something else. So in terms of just talking about exposing to stuff or whatever. So like both you and Aaron are both responsible for popping my Rocky Horror Picture Show cherry.
Me too.
Yes.
Because
Me too.
y'all brought me to like the first I'd ever watched the whole thing, and that has something that has slowly over time grown into an obsession for me, where I was like, oh, I like that. And then like this year, like all Halloween, that soundtrack's all I started listening to.
Hell yeah, you did.
And then I started getting into Shock Treatment, which was like the
Yes.
sequel movie. And I was so surprised that I liked it, because I was
love
like,
Shock Treatment.
when I first heard like I can't remember the name of that song, but it's like Oh Blender.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what the name of the song is.
Micro Digital Awaker.
I didn't like it initially because I was like, this isn't really like Rocky Horror Picture Show, because I was thinking about, oh, I want it to be the same thing. But then I watched the whole movie and I was like, oh, I get it. Like, this is the same sort of ideas mutated into like 1980s aesthetics and like taken further. And I was like, it's kind of sad, because I wish there could be for every decade like a kind of
Rocky Horror by Richard O'Brien. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And-
mad props to Richard O'Brien. That guy is a genius. And like, because you've seen Flash Gordon too, right, Rainwater? 'Cause he shows up in there.
I haven't seen all of Flash Gordon. So
Motherfuck.
I know.
I'll
one
tell
of
you,
the-
man.
out
I
of
need
the
to be
list.
there with y'all to show you this stuff. Like, but Richard O'Brien's in Flash Gordon as well. He's like the sidekick character to Timothy Dalton's Prince of the Forest kind of guy. It's a fun time. I dig it.
That's the one that Queen does the soundtrack for, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And see, that was the beauty of you, Joker, was that it wasn't so much, hey, do you want to come over and watch this? It was, hey, sit down, watch this. And then you just put in a disc or something, and it was like, there was no choice. We had to watch something, but you instinctively would know what worked, because like once you found out that I was into Batman the Animated Series, you started talking to me, oh, did you watch the Justice League? I'm like, I didn't even know there was one. He was like, oh, fuck, this is what we're doing for the next 2 weeks. And we binged the shit out of it. And then, like, it wasn't even just that. It would be, you would start going, like, you would put an IMDb trivia page to shame with the stuff that you knew about Bruce Timm and the production and all that stuff. Like, your knowledge was fucking vast about literally everything that we talked about. It got to the point where there were some other friends, because, you know, when you have a friendship, you usually try to mix groups of different things. Certain friends would just be like, I can't hang out with Joker. That kid fucking knows everything. And it's just like, well, yeah, but what's wrong with that? Like, he's like just exposing other stuff. And it's like, yeah, but it's annoying. To me, it wasn't. Like, I was fucking thirsty for all that shit. So like, it was incredible, like how well you knew stuff about literally everything. And then you could connect that tissue about like, oh, if you like this, you like this, you like this, you like this. And not everything hit. Like, I don't watch anime. No. I tried Cowboy Bebop. I think it was Death Note, I think it was you tried to get me to watch. Is that... Maybe. I don't know. It's got the weird guy that looks like Hades or something.
Yeah, that would be Death Note.
Yeah, I think you tried to get me to watch that too, and it didn't work. But, like, there were things that, I would watch Cowboy Bebop, and I was like, all right, this is actually pretty decent. Like, I'm not in love with it. I don't watch it or whatever. But I was able to admit that there was an anime that I didn't fucking loathe outside of Pokemon. And you were like, well, at least we got you away from Pokemon. So...
Well, and to go back to, like, your original question, right? We're going to rein it back into the central, like, the format, the question and answer. Like... I did have a lot of people I owe that to, that I mimicked that off of. Because ultimately, like, each of us is kind of just a conflagration of, like, people that we meet, right? Like, we carry, like, a piece of them with us.
Yep.
For sure.
Like, I had a friend in high school who was kind of, like, the patriarch of our whole group. He was, like, the king of drama club kind of guy. And he was, like, Mr. knows it, can get it for you, knows how to do all the stuff, and you'd like this. And I really looked up to him, because I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, really shy in my first year of high school, and, like, I was, like, I aped a lot of my personality off of him at that point in time. And like, you fall apart, with people, and you don't talk to him for a while or whatever. Like, he and I probably haven't talked in over 10 years, but
Yeah.
that part of him's still with me. And like the Bruce Timm stuff, I really owe a lot to my friend Rob in Ann Arbor. He was like a big band guy. Like, he was in a lot of like band stuff, and I'd see him play, but he was like really into like MST3K, and he was really into like Bruce Timm stuff, like all of that kind of universe. And like, he showed me what was good there with the Bruce Timm stuff in particular. I had already kind of been watching MST because like what nerdy kid did not watch that?
Right.
It's pretty great. And I mean, that goes for Joel Robinson, that goes for Mike Nelson.
Yeah, the whole gang. Yeah.
I will say I was not a big fan of the newest permutation of it.
I'd love to talk about that too at some point, because that's
really?
like, it's interesting because it is so different, right? In terms of they changed the tempo of it, and that change of tempo actually kind of, in my mind, at least from what I'm used to, kind of hurts my appreciation of the jokes. And like,
like if they were gonna do something like that, and I'm not gonna bash on anybody because it's not my place, but
we can think of it as a critique.
Yeah, if they were gonna do something like that, I wish they would have just made like a oh, there goes Joe. Okay. All right, we're by ourselves. We're now two hosts. All right. So
these two Mats.
These2mats.com. So
I heard that. I'm back.
I heard that. What are you kids doing in there? So where was I going?
I ruined your train of thought. I'm sorry.
So I wish they would have made a show that was like an homage to MST if they were going to do something like that.
Yeah.
Where it was like its own new thing. Like, don't prance out the same puppets, but they have completely different voices for like the third time in their history.
Yeah, I got what you're saying.
Third or fourth time, because I mean, I remember back to this season 0 of MST episodes when they were on cable access.
Yeah, they did have different voices for the robots, didn't they?
Because one of them was one of the Mads was different. One of the villains was different. It was like there was either 3 of them, or it was like a different guy.
I've seen like one of those episodes, and it was kind of weird because it was like they were still figuring out the format and the formula and whatever. I mean, it evolved, right? And it's kind of like the new MST3K sort of. It feels like a lot of reboots and remakes where it's like, we want to try and do the it's all this nostalgia stuff, but not necessarily evolving on the format entirely. Like, they evolved in some ways. I really liked the addition of like the ska band, like,
oh yeah,
I like that. And I kind of liked what they did a little bit with was it Pearl's clone, like that whole thing. Like, that's kind of fun.
The Felicia Day's character?
Yeah. Like, that's kind of fun. But like,
well, and I mean, it had a lot of things that could have been good. Like, the Mads were like Felicia Day and Patton Oswalt.
Yeah.
I mean, they're great.
It's great picks.
Great picks. The intro was rad as fuck with like the like rock band, like you're kind of saying,
Sure.
And like the whole evil henchman thing was cool. There were cool things about it. Yeah. It's just, what turned me off? There was one moment that turned me off, and I've never gone back to it. It's the first, which is a good practice. Just as soon as something makes you uncomfortable, never go back to it, kids. So the one thing that turned me off about it was they made Servo fly up in the theater.
Yes.
And over to the top of the screen.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait a second. No. Because he always, whenever they carried him, if you know your MST lore, if you know the lore, the reason that Mike or Joel carries him in and puts him in the chair in real life is because he's a puppet, right? And he has to put him on Kevin Murphy's hand. But in the show, they said that he had to be carried over a vent in the floor because his hover skirt would not allow him to go over it.
Oh.
And then if you go ahead and say, hey, we got a guy from Nerdist and he's in a yellow suit and Netflix is doing it, and look at the big shiny, we're going to take the thing that all the nerds liked and we're going to give it to all the popular people. And you just completely erase that part of it. That right there shows me you're being disingenuous to the original spirit of the thing.
Right. No, I got you.
And I feel like that's going on with a lot of things now, like the reboots and the remakes. And
I was literally just about to point that out, and I don't even think it's just reboots and remakes. I think that some of the stuff that they did. So obviously, I know you're going to be up on this, but The Walking Dead, when the show first came out, I was like all in. I was 100% in on that show, and somewhere early in season 2. They had fired Frank Darabont, who was really the driving force in getting it going, and shit started falling apart for me. Like, I remember specifically, and this is to your point about one thing is like the straw that breaks the camel's back. There was an episode where I think Shane and like this big like fat hunter guy or whatever were like up against a brick wall, and there was like a cage of zombies in front of them reaching through, and it's like literally back against the wall. They're caged in. How are they going to get out of it? Cliffhanger or whatever. And then it goes to credits, and it's like, oh, I gotta watch the next episode. And it comes on to the next episode, and Shane and the Hunter are running down a hallway, and I was like, what the fuck? How did they get out of that situation? And it's just like, oh, and like, I talk to people about that now when they're trying to tell me, oh, you need to watch Walking Dead, it gets really good. I'm like, no, fuck that show. Because if you're gonna take those kinds of shortcuts and, you know, just kind of fuck like the storytelling, like, I don't want to be involved. I'm not giving you my attention, my money, my time, whatever. And
sure,
I feel like that's happening with a lot of properties when they do it, like even with Star Wars, like me and Rainwater were talking about Last Jedi and this and that. There's so many liberties taken these days where it feels like they're thumbing their nose at the core fan base in order to expand, which I get it. That's the business model, and that makes sense. You got to make the profit back for a $500 million movie. But at the same time, like, I don't feel like a lot of them are looking at the long-term implications of it. They're looking for the quick cash grab to make back the money as opposed to cementing something that they can build on in the future. Because most of these executives and most of the storytelling are like, I need to get my money now, because when I get out of here, I'm not making royalties off of this shit. And the studio, fuck the studio. You know what I mean? So I'm curious to know your take on some of maybe the biggest violations, because you're a connoisseur of all things comic book. And at least to me.
I sound like such a douchebag.
You're not a douchebag. You're like the most knowledgeable, like, sequential comics person that I know, and it cross pollinates between film and comic books. So I'm curious to know, from your opinion, what is like some of the biggest violations that some franchises have made in the past decade of comic adaptations? What would you say are some of the biggest missed opportunities to do it right?
I'm going to take that in a little different direction. So, that ding was perfect with your thumbs up. Awesome. Viewers, we have sound effects now.
Yeah.
So, in terms of changing formats and the annoyance of reboots and remakes not potentially respecting source material as much, I feel like a lot of nerds get in the weeds about that, and I say nerds with the highest respect. I consider myself a nerd. Nerds are great, and I love all of you for being that way, but I think people get lost in the weeds a lot on that, and they focus too much on the differences. They focus on, and it kind of, I'm going to get woo about this too. Like, it kind of goes to like what's going on in the country right now.
Yeah.
We're too divided. All of us are too divided in this country. Like, we have to draw hard lines against other people with like, this is the right way because it's my way, and that's your way, and it's not the right way. And I think that's kind of a toxic way to think about stuff.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Definitely doesn't help. That's for sure.
And even with something like trivial, like fiction, right? Like media that's supposed to just entertain us. I love the original Star Wars and the expanded universe and all the novels and the comics. And all of those were pretty much cast aside by and large when they came about with episodes 7, 8, and 9. And I mean that was a decision they made because that was the decision they made. I mean, it's the end of it.
Right.
It made me sad, but it also, I like Star Wars, so I was willing to give 7, 8, and 9 a shot and see what they're doing with the new stuff. And by and large, I'll say I liked it. I enjoy what they are doing now with the stuff.
You're talking about like The Mandalorian?
I love The Mandalorian. I think Mandalorian is, even saying that I just said I like 7, 8, 9, which I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think The Mandalorian more accurately captures that original excitement that all of us had seeing Star Wars and Return of the Jedi and Empire, which I know I said those out of order, nerds. 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. And because I mean it kind of ramped up with the prequels, right? We all had the Pepsi cans and the the little midi-chlorian chips that came with the action figure.
Yep.
There's always a lot of hype around things, and like it can be good and bad, but I think what we're losing by completely casting aside the new stuff is what new audience members that we would have a chance to bond with and enjoy something with are picking up out of that being their first experience. Like I think especially like I may be speaking out of turn here, but from what I gather on social media, a lot of LGBTQ plus and I'm trying to say it correctly, I'm not trying to lampoon it, that community are finding a lot of great role models in a lot of the newer stuff, because it's being written with that in mind. And it's not just something that you have to try to find in the crevices or in the background of what was made prior, which there is that stuff too. And it's great if you can find it. But I feel like they need someone to identify with too. And for, kind of the classic nerds who were there from kind of the beginning. I wasn't there from right at the beginning. I was born the year after Jedi. But I think to cut that off is to cut off all those people and kind of passively invalidate their experience.
That's
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I was gonna comment on that and just say like it's interesting because I was thinking earlier today. We're gonna get back to this initial point, but I'm gonna go way out. So
that's the way the show is.
I was listening to.
I've been watching, as you should too.
I was listening to Led Zeppelin today, and I was thinking to myself while I was working, and I was like, what was it like for the person who for the people who grew up listening to like hard rock and Led Zeppelin for the first time culturally, right?
Yeah.
Like, what was it like to because that kind of music had never really existed in that format, in that kind of way previously. And it must have been really bonding for a lot of people who were like, oh, my mom thinks this stuff is shit, that she doesn't let me listen to it at home or whatever. I have to listen to it on the radio, whatever,
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, kind of going back to what you're saying, it is like, the thing about these cultures is they are great bonding experiences for people. And there are, like, my whole thing with Star Wars is like, with the most recent trilogy is like, my complaints about them have nothing really to do with the way that they used the license. It had more to do with like, I just found the first episode and the last episode to be kind of boring or confusing or like not going in a place that I would have preferred in terms of like the narrative. Because I really wanted Kylo Ren and Rey stuff to like work out in this particular way, and didn't work out in that way. Last Jedi I thought was like the shit for me because I'm a degenerate and I want to see the Jedi scrolls being burned and Yoda like like that for me was like, I'm happy. I'm a pig in shit. Like I couldn't ask for a better Star Wars movie now because it's all this Jedi drama that I've been wanting in this story. And that was the thing for me.
Yeah.
Different for everybody, right? Like some people really like the rebellion storyline. I didn't care for the rebellion storyline in the whole thing, but a lot of people did like that. It fit with them. It fit with how they were feeling. especially during the years that those movies were being made. I'm sure like that was really something that they felt some kind of compersion or affinity to. You know what I mean?
You know what's funny? Like hearing you mention that, Rainwater, is like, if I know one thing about you, man, it's you're a really spiritual dude. Like you're into like kind of like the out there, like the like what do I want to say? The Steve Ditko, Doctor Strange, like
right.
exploring the bounds of where we're going as a human spirit, right?
Yeah,
and like
that's the shit that interests me for sure.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And like so I can definitely see why like the tumultuous nature of Jedi and Sith appealed a lot to you, and like seeing something as big as the scrolls being burned was like significant for you, and I definitely understand that, and it was pretty rad. I'm not going to take anything away from that. And you mentioned the rebellion part not really hitting for you as strongly.
Yeah,
that hit the strongest for me in all of the Star Wars movies. And in the like, what was it, episodes 1, 2, and 3? I felt the omission of that. Like there was no,
oh sure,
because I mean there was no Empire, right? So who were they going to rebel against?
Yeah,
that there's a reason there was no rebellion. But like I missed that.
Yeah.
Like I'm like if I picked a character out of the very first movie, Episode 4, A New Hope, I'm a Han Solo guy.
Sure.
I like the guys who live in the cracks between Jedi and Sith and Empire and Rebels. They're just trying to earn a buck, man.
And
they
I
have
will
a hoopy
say,
ship,
yeah,
you know,
right?
I love it.
I will say I did like Poe Dameron a lot as a character. He's a
Hell
really
yeah.
character. Like that
Oscar
is
Isaac
something
is
I
genius
appreciate.
in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I got a question for Matt, the Joker. And this is kind of interesting because, again, I go back to the connective tissue thing. Rainwater is a very sequential artist kind of guy. I'm a very film kind of guy. You're a little bit in the middle of that. You know what I mean? Like you kind of dabbled in both of them because more so sequential than the film, but it's not like you're completely out of that realm. So I'm curious to know. We had kind of talked about, I think we talked about this in a prior episode. You'd probably know better than I do because I don't really listen to them after I post them. But
sure.
Do you find yourself as, an artist and a storyteller, because, you are, when you're watching things, and this is kind of going back to the question I was talking about, missed opportunities when you're adapting things, you've got a firm foot probably in both mediums. Do you ever get frustrated when you're watching it going, I could do better than that? Because whenever I'm watching shit, the filmmaker in me is very egotistical, and I'm just like, and people hate seeing movies with me now because it's just like my level of standard is just so fucking high because I'm so egotistical. I'm like, yeah, but they could have done this and this and this and this and this and this and this. I would have done that. Do you find yourself frustrated sometimes when you're watching stuff? Because I'm not saying you're as egotistical as I am, because I don't know anybody who's as egotistical as I am. But is it frustrating to you at, being an artist, not, being able or knowing so much about so much of this stuff and seeing things that are great that don't get explored? Is it frustrating, having that depth of knowledge and seeing things just completely neglected?
Yeah, a lot of things get whizzed down their legs, right? Like they just have the best opportunity and they just whiz it right down their pant, and it's just a puddle on the floor when you do experience it in the theater seat you paid $20 to sit in.
Yeah.
And like by and large, I'm anti-rich person, so like I think the studios, it's not a secret. The studios are to blame. They want a profit margin. They want this. They want that. And sometimes it works out for the better. I was just talking to Aaron the other night about how in the movie Big, I heard with Tom Hanks, I heard that, and unsubstantiated. So please do your own research, audience. I heard that the original ending for that movie, they wanted the woman to go up to Zoltar after Tom Hanks got returned to being a kid and wish to be a kid again so that she could be with him. And the ending of that movie, as it was already weird, right? Because the whole time we knew this was a little kid, that she was like kind of like wanting to jump his bones, right? And we're just like kind of squirming in our seats a bit.
Yeah.
But then it just ended up jumping on a trampoline and everything's cool. But I think it would have been weirder if she would have given over her adult life and gotten back to being a kid, because it's like now she's a homeless kid. Her parents are elderly. Where is she gonna go? Is she gonna be his sister? Because then that's weird.
Right.
Is she his new foster sister? Like, you know, and in terms of like things going, because the studio, and my understanding is that the studio forced them to be like, no, he goes back to being a kid and it's bittersweet and the end. And that's how it goes. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it was still weird, but it was better that way than all the questions raised by her magically becoming a kid out of nowhere in the third act.
Yeah.
Because you're introducing a new plot element in the third act that we then want to explore, and it's not a Lord of the Rings style movie where we have another hour and a half to go.
Yeah. So sometimes,
you know,
so what you're saying is sometimes that it's good to have that kind of box.
It can be. I think, like anything, it can go either way. I guess is my answer more than anything, succinctly, is it can go, the studio can ruin something and the studio can improve something.
Sure.
But
I would say that the balance of that is
ruining it or improving it.
I was going to say the balance of that.
They care about how much money they're going to
make. That usually ends up being the poor decision. But I agree with you that sometimes I would say 9, maybe 8 times out of 10 that's the wrong decision. But like 2 of those times, it's like, oh no, they needed to dial back the artist a little bit. Like they were gonna go too wonky. Now I'm okay with wonky. I you know it's
Sure.
refreshing every now and then. But no, I agree with you on that. We're kind of getting towards.
Before we get off of that,
sure.
Just before we get off of that, like they're going after the profit, but they're basing that on the lowest common denominator. Because they're constantly marketing to who's, you know, Joe Smith, you know, works, you know, 10 hours at the plant and then wants to take his kids to a movie or wants to take his wife to a movie. And is he going to understand it? Is he going to be familiar with the references? Is he going to, you know, and then you get to something like Star Wars, like we were talking about, with a rich history, where you kind of have to do the homework, or something like Marvel, where you kind of have to have been on the MCU ride since 2008 with Iron Man to really get everything.
Yeah.
And like people have hard resistances to that, but at the same time, I don't think it's bad that those things exist because those things are for the people who are on that ride. And if you're not on that ride, I feel like they should be giving you things that are for you as well, or, you know, don't require that much of a lead time in movies to watch before you go see it. You know, I feel like they should, if they're providing a service, they should be providing quality examples of both of those elements. Like if you're wanting to go, you know, full Mouse House, Disney, Star Wars, you know, Wonder Blast, like everything.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Have it be connected to Netflix, connected to HBO Max or Disney Plus now, or wherever you want it. Great. But know what you're doing. And I think that's where like the DC movies, for instance, are kind of lacking. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's clear. Because they, you know, I'm very excited about Robert Pattinson being Batman because I feel like he's going to bring a lot to the role. And I feel like and Zhao may have different opinions. He's the Batman kid. Yeah,
I'm
you do.
Fascinated to hear.
That's a whole podcast in itself. Me and you going all in on Batman.
But I'm excited about that because I think it will offer something new. But then they're also saying, well, Ben Affleck is still going to be Batman, and then we're going to cast a third person as Batman.
Michael Keaton's coming back.
So in the same, Michael Keaton, which we're all happy about that. We love 89. I mean, we being the, you know, you and I, Joe, at least, if not Rainwater as well.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
But, you know, and I'm excited about Michael Keaton. I love the guy. His performances are great. But they're going to have 3 people playing Batman in one, like, sector of movie. Like, you know, it used to be you get one person being a certain hero for 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
You know, but then it started like Andrew Garfield with Spider-Man for like a hot 3 years and then done. And then, you know, it became MCU time. Now they're talking about having every Spider-Man who's ever existed in the same movie for some reason, along with 18 villains. I feel like that's going to go right over the cliff. It's a lot of hubris. I feel like the hubris is going to be what kills Spider-Man. It's not going to be the Green Goblin. It's going to be hubris.
Sure. In line with theme.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
I mean, it's a character about guilt, but
true.
I guess to wrap up my point, lowest common denominator, marketing data can ruin media for people who are interested in the narrative.
Fair enough. All right, so we got about 5 minutes left on a recording. I want to tap into your potential here, and this is just going to be completely me and Rainwater, and we didn't prep for this, and we probably should have prepped you for this because of putting you on the spot. But I'm curious to know, because like I said, you were the guy that introduced us to things that we weren't exploring or we didn't know about or anything like that. So I'm curious, because we've just caught up today, like we haven't talked to each other in at least a decade-ish. What kind of stuff? I want you to throw out a couple of maybe comics or movies that you feel maybe either me or Rainwater might like, or some of the artists that listen to our show would like, that might be beneficial to them. What's some obscure shit that's really hardcore quality that you could recommend? It really in any medium. Like name some artists or maybe some avenues that maybe all of us should go and explore. Because if there's anybody that can recommend some good shit, it's you. So what's off the radar right now that really should be on the radar?
I watch a lot of old stuff, and I watch a lot of like what people would categorize as trash. So I don't know if you want that stuff, because I find trash very entertaining because it's
trash.
I love trash. I gotta pay Sesame Street $1 billion now. So the trash stuff. I mean, I like stuff like Henenlotter's like Frankenhooker. I don't know if you've seen Frankenhooker.
No, I haven't even heard of that.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, check out Frankenhooker.
I've heard of it. I have not checked it out.
This is in the good movie column. This is not trash. This is a good movie column. Face in the Crowd. Have you guys seen Face in the Crowd?
No. Negative.
I think it just went off HBO Max, so this is not a proper time for me to be suggesting it. But I liked it so well, I went out and got the Criterion collection disc of it.
Okay.
It stars Andy Griffith of Andy Griffith Show fame.
Oh shit!
But he is a sociopathic, self-destructive rock star, country rock star.
What?
Yes.
I need this immediately.
He is incredible in that movie. Like,
what's it called again?
It's called a Face in the Crowd, and it's on Criterion Collection. And it was recently streaming on HBO Max, but it was in the like, you better watch this because we're taking it off.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to see it, but I've never wanted to pay Criterion prices to like roll the dice on that.
I hear that.
Right. It really, really good, and it actually got a purchase out of me just watching it. Trying to go fast. I'm sure we're through our 5 minutes almost.
No, you got time.
Oh, in the trash column. Here's the thing. I will shout out another podcast if that's all right with you, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
How Did This Get Made is where I find a lot of my trash.
I've heard of that podcast. I haven't listened to it.
It's hosted by Paul Scheer. He's a comedian from Human Giant. He's now working a lot with Marvel. Jason Mantzoukas, who is one of the funniest, smartest guys on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. He's always entertaining. And June Diane Raphael, who is Paul Scheer's wife. And an accomplished actor. She is not just Paul Scheer's wife, but she's very she's joined Jane Fonda in a lot of social issues.
Yeah.
And she's also in the show Grace and Frankie, if you end up liking her on the podcast. So that is that. And in the show category, as long as we're talking about shows, new show I've really glommed onto and watched the whole season about 4 times in a row. It's only 6 episodes, but Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun.
Okay,
I've never even heard of it. What platform
is this
on?
Is this a BBC show?
It is on Netflix.
Okay.
It is a 3-man. Well, it's technically a 5-person group, but it's a 3-man in front of the camera comedy troupe from Australia, and they're friends with a lot of the Comedy Bang Bang people. And Like Ed Helms from Saturday Night Live is executive producer on it.
Wow.
And there's a whole gag with his name that I won't spoil for people, but it's very funny. And I routinely rewatch that show, waiting for the new season. So if by chance they end up hearing this, new season, please, would be great.
Don't get your hopes up. Netflix is fucking notorious for, here's 2 seasons of a really great show. Bye. Because if I could get another season of Santa Clarita Diet, I would be fucking clapping erasers to get that shit made.
But yeah, I mean they had a very significant YouTube presence even before they got picked up by Netflix. So if they lost the Netflix show, they would still be doing stuff. I guarantee it. I could recommend stuff forever, so I'm sure I'm through.
What do we get? We
now.
got a movie, we got a TV show, we got a podcast. Is there? Oh, how about a comic? Is there a good comic that you can recommend?
A lot of my comics are old comics right now. Oh, but I've really liked Hickman's run on House of X, Dawn of X, like all the X-Men stuff.
Okay.
It's very polarizing. People love it or hate it. But Rainwater, I think you're really going to vibe on it, being an Alan Moore Swamp Thing fan.
Yeah, I did like Hickman's run on
Fantastic Four.
I think it was Shield, because he did a run with Dustin Weaver, who was another artist I interned with for a little bit, and it was different. I liked what they were doing, like Da Vinci and Tesla and all this other stuff. Like, it went kind of ape shit, you know what I mean? Which I always appreciate.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I mean, I liked, Legion, the TV series with Dan Stevens on FX. That was another X-Men adjacent thing. I'm always going to recommend the Max. Please read the Max, at least the first 10
Max
issues. It's amazing.
That's a comic book?
The MTV. It's a comic book from Image Comics, and there's an MTV animated series that you can find on Amazon Prime and other outlets that profile the first 10 issues in cartoon form. So that's a lot of fun. 2 more trash picks and then I'll be done.
Cool.
So John Stamos, if you like John Stamos, was in a little movie called Never Too Young to Die.
All right, I'm putting that down.
And it is John Stamos as he's the son of a James Bond character, not James Bond, but a James Bond character who dies. And so he has to stop the villain, who is Gene Simmons from Kiss. And so here's the thing. I need to disclaimer this for the modern day viewer. It is a mildly transphobic movie.
Oh.
If you are triggered by that,
how old is it?
Do not watch it.
Is it an older movie?
It is from the 80s.
Okay, so that explains that.
Yeah, that explains that. Gene Simmons' character is I don't even want to say a transvestite or a transsexual person, because they don't really know what they're saying in the movie to be able to have him be one thing over the other. They say he is both man and woman, 100% man and 100% woman.
Okay.
And so at times he's cross-dressing, and other times he's dressing like a man. It's all very over the top and characterized. I'm not big into that characterization. I'm not sitting there laughing about that because
right,
my friends are dear to me, and I don't like to laugh at that circumstance. But I do think the cornier parts of the movie, such as like a rocket launcher that was invented in a college dorm room, and a tracker that is actually bubble gum, that is like a little mini microphone, but you chew it up first for it to work. I think those points are really funny. And I think I brought that one up to make the point of not devaluing something just because it may have one triggering aspect to it.
Sure.
And obviously if you don't like it, if you think it's offensive, absolutely don't watch it. Yeah. Absolutely don't. And don't support it. Vote with your money. Absolutely. Last trash pick is a little movie called JD's Revenge. It was put out on Arrow Video in Blu-ray format recently, and it is what's called a blaxploitation film.
Yep.
And again, I know I'm treading into very dangerous waters here. That is a genre of film, and the way I view it is that it allowed African American actors to get work in movies that were prominent with African American people and actors in a time where they were not getting the work they deserved.
That's right.
But the films are very exploitive in nature, and everyone involved agreed to be in them. It's like Rudy Ray Moore with Dolomite and Petey Wheatstraw, the Devil's Son-in-Law.
Yeah.
Like I know our friend James Stanley Rainwater from SCAD.
Yeah.
He's a great dude, and he and I really bonded over a lot of like really good blaxploitation movies too.
Okay.
But that's a good one, and the plot of it, just the log line, is a very nice, law-abiding, pleasant man gets possessed by the spirit of a malignant pimp. And so he just suddenly starts becoming this malignant pimp to everyone in his life. And the main actor in it is Glenn Turman. He is a little known but very awesome, really good actor. If you see him, you'll say, "Oh, that guy. I've seen him in a billion things." Yeah, Glenn Turman's great, and he gives a really good performance.
So
I'll stop myself now.
This is what I'm going to say is, next time we have you on, we're going to start with this kind of a segment, because I feel like this has been the best part of the whole show. I think the next time we have you on, I think if it's not the reunite of you and Diego, it's definitely going to be me and Rainwater either coming back to you having exposed ourselves to the stuff that you just recommended with our reactions to it, or we're just going to start throwing out stuff to you and saying like, I'm really big into What We Do in the Shadows. Is there anything like that? You know what I mean? Like, and have you kind of riff on stuff and start recommending, because honestly, I feel like I've got like a whole shit load of stuff now to take over the rest of my week, so I'm not bored in quarantine. So while I do love the fact that we caught up for the first half, I definitely think that the strong suit of you, Joker, is 100% the guy who can point you in the direction you need to go. Not like a muse, but like, I don't know. I want to say a librarian, where someone says, "Hey, I'm looking for books on this," and you're like, "You want to go to this section," but in the most endearing way. That's the way I'm trying to equate it. This has been a blast for me. I can't wait to have you back on. I'm so glad that you decided to come on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Matt.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure.
So next time we are definitely going to get more woo-woo. That's a word that I have not heard in a long time, but I love it. We're going to get more woo-woo. We're going to get more philosophical with some of the stuff, because I think that's where our meat and potatoes of our audience is they want to hear the philosophy stuff that we're talking about. But we also want to get new stuff into our lives, and Joker is the guy to go to for that stuff, for me at least. And to be honest with you, before Joker was on here, Rainwater was kind of the guy dropping references to shit that I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. I want to look that up afterwards. But now, like, Rainwater's the guy making notes, so that should be everything that the audience needs to know about the power of Matt, the Joker, in terms of his references, his knowledge, his depth of knowing that something might be trash, but just because it's trash, it doesn't mean it's not worth something. One man's what's the expression? One's man trash is another man's treasure, something like that.
You got it.
I'm hoping to God. I don't know. Are you subscribed to Shudder?
Yes.
Do you watch the Last Drive-In with Joe Bob?
Oh yeah, love Joe Bob Briggs.
Okay, because I'm obsessed with that, and no one else that I know is obsessed with it. So we're gonna have to riff on that for a little while, because like that to me, that has been the trash reference movies for me in your absence. And it's just been going to that stuff and seeing like, wow, this fucking movie is bonkers. And I've watched a couple of them. There was one with a clown that it wasn't because of the clown thing and the Joker like relationship, but it was just like, I knew when I was watching it, I was like, Joker's fucking seen this. I know he's fucking seen this. And it was just like one of those things.
Was it Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
No. Oh, it was something.
Was it drive-through?
It was on the Last Drive-In. It was something. I want to feel like it was the guy's one and only movie. He was like a career clown, and they just gave him a movie. I want to say it was Blood Harvest. I want to say that's what it was called.
Oh, yeah, Blood Harvest, yeah.
And I watched that and I was like, this is a movie that Joker would have shown me if we were still at SCAD and he knew what a horror fiend I was these days.
Oh, about clowns. Have you seen Clown?
I'm aware of it. I have not. Is it worth?
Check out the horror movie Clown. It's a very cool thing. It treats clowns as a mythological creature instead of as...
I want to check this out now.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I'm
It starts with a guy getting a clown suit out of like a trunk he finds in his attic that was not his. It just came with the house. But let's just say some interesting things happen to him once he puts the suit on.
I'm going to add one more recommendation since we're on clowns. Baskets. Have any of y'all seen Baskets?
Yes.
I have not.
I've fucking one of the best shows I've seen in a long time. It
It's
stars
pretty
Zach
funny.
Galifianakis.
Oh, I've heard
Louis
of this.
Anderson
I've never
plays
watched
his
it.
mom. Yeah, it's so good. It's like one of the best shows I've seen in a long time.
Noted. All right, well, that's going to be it for us here at the Spaghetti Factory. We will see you guys next week. Joker, thank you again for coming on. Rainwater, my brother as always. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Later, y'all.
See you.